Good morning. My name is Frederick Delk, and I'm here to present on a topic that's very important for all teachers, but very, very important for first year teachers. It's called Classroom Management 101, a teacher survival guide. One of the most important things for a first year teacher is getting that classroom management in place. So today, I'm not going to give you every tip you need, but I'm going to give you some tips and some ideas and some things that you need to focus on as a first year teacher. And as you move forward in your career, that you can make some adjustments and meet with other teachers and actually get this process right. It's very important that you get classroom management correct right the very first time. We'll get it right as a teacher so that way your classroom can run smoothly. So before we go any further, my question is, what is classroom management? Think of classroom management as a process in which teachers do things in the classroom for behavioral to help the students act for appropriate behavior. Think of it as the things we do in our classroom, the way we do our things. Classroom management means how the students act, what I'm going to do, what are my procedures in place, what is my seating chart. There's a whole lot of things to do in classroom management that's very important, and it's very important that you get that right. So that is what is classroom management, and do we need it? Why do we need it? Because it's very important. It helps us as teachers make sure that our students are acting correct, their behavior is appropriate for the classroom. It helps us be organized. It helps us maximize the time in our classroom. It helps the students be more successful when we're prepared. So it's very important that we have those procedures in place so that we don't lose instruction time. One of the biggest things my former principal, he would ask first year teachers in their interview is, if you get one thing right your first year, or what's the most important thing that you need to get right as a teacher, what would it be? A lot of teachers, the first thing come to mind is grading papers and lesson plans. Some teachers would be juggling time. But the most important thing that he was looking for with those teachers was the classroom management. And he's correct. It's very important. Grading papers, the organization, getting enough sleep, all that is a part of your classroom management, because the more prepared you are in your class, the more prepared you are for your students. So that's why it's very important that's why it's very important that we have classroom management skills, effective classroom management skills and procedures and techniques. And it's also why it's very important. Why do we need it? So now let's take a moment to talk about the organization. My first question is, what should my classroom look like? As a first year teacher, you're going to be in your classroom and you're going to be excited because for once, you're not going to have the student teach or share a classroom with another person. You have your own classroom. Now that you have your own classroom, it's all up to you. As I always tell my first year teachers, it's showtime, baby. Because think about it. You have a classroom. It's yours. But what do you do with that space? How do you maximize? What do you do in your classroom? What do you want your classroom to look like? Do you want to keep it very simple? Do you want to add a lot of personal touches? You want to make it unique? But it's very important that no matter what you do in the classroom, you set it up that is most effective for you. Hang posters that are meaningful. Hang posters that are inspirational if you must say so, if you must do so, but also keep an area in your classroom to display student work. A lot of students really enjoy, whether it's elementary or high school, the opportunity to see their work being posted in the classroom. So also think about those. Have an area for your classroom, your agenda and the stuff on your board that's very important, that's mandatory, like your objectives. But also have an area where for vocabulary, those words that you need to change out every unit so the students are being very focused. One of the things that I've observed over the last few years for my AEA and ESL teachers, they have an area for anchor charts. And as they're doing the lesson, they're creating those anchor charts and posting them across the classroom. So the students, they're learning the math technique, but they're also being able to see the examples across the classroom. So those are things you want to do as you want to set up your classroom. Another thing is, what do I do with all this stuff? As first year teachers, you're going to get materials from Office Depot. You're going to buy things from these different stores, Walmart, Target. You're going to get books from your school. You're going to get textbooks that you want to build your own library that you use throughout your college career. Where do you put all this stuff? What do I do with all this stuff? You want to make sure that you have effective procedures in place or effective setups and maximize that area for your class, your materials. As for me, any materials that I would use throughout the year or for a particular assignment, I would place them on the front table. So as the students entered the classroom, they were able to take those materials with them. And once they got to the desk, there was no reason for them to get back up. Also for calculators, sharpening pencils, how will the students get all those materials? What do they need to do? My goal was to make sure they did everything as they entered the classroom. So once classroom started, The only way that a student will be allowed to get up unless the pencil sharpener, they need to sharpen the pencil or the lead broke. One of the big things is, how do you want your students to sit? That goes back to the very first question. A seating chart. You want to make sure you set up your seating chart where it's very effective for your students to be able to see the entire classroom and not have any part of the student's back to you. Also, you want to make sure that you're able to see every student's faces. Make sure that you also create a seating chart or environment for your classrooms where you can get in and out of the desk area. And anytime that you need to go to a student, you can easily get to them without having to go around and maneuver your way through the students. The more time you spend planning these parts of your classroom, the easier it will be for you as a first-year teacher. So let's take a few minutes with your neighbor and talk about some of the organization skills that you want to do in your classroom. All right, next we're going to talk about procedures. One of the biggest procedures that we want to talk about is classroom rules. What rules will you have for your class? I've seen some first-year teachers come up with 15 to 20 rules, so many rules the students can't really think about it. But it's very important that you have rules that are simple, concise, effective, and easy to read. The less rules, in this case, less is better. A lot of times when I was teaching, I will have 3 rules that I would non-negotiable for me, but I also let the students pick 2 rules or come up with 2 rules and let them have some buy-in to the discipline in the classroom. Once you decide those rules, make sure they're posted. Make sure they're visible. You want to revisit these rules every day for the first maybe week or so in the class. After you revisit the rules, make sure the students are in the class. And it's also, whenever the student is misbehaving, you can visit the rules, say, hey, remember rule number 1, no talking when I'm talking. And make sure the students know the rule. Make sure their parents are familiar with the rules and they're posted, they're visible for the students. The next question is, what if a student needs to leave the classroom? Have plans in place that if a student needs to go to the restroom, if a student needs to go to the office, make sure that you have those plans and procedures in place, and also go over those procedures and rules with the students. So when they know they have to go to the restroom, what do they need to do? What do they need to do if someone comes to the classroom? Does a student greet a visitor at the door? Is that your task? All those procedures need to be gone over throughout the class, the very first day of school, but revisit them as time goes on. Now, of course, the procedures for visitors in the classroom, the students may not remember, but as those situations occur, you want to remind them, revisit the rules. The next is, how will my class function? In other words, what will I have to do? How will my students turn in assignments? How will we hand out materials? How will we receive and collect the homework? Anytime you have turning, one of the easiest ways to do is to have a student do that. That gives the student buy-in to your classroom. If the student has the opportunity to be a part of the class by collecting papers, handing out papers, it gives them ownership. One year, I decided to do something totally different. I didn't ask for volunteers. I picked somebody that was a student that we had a few run-ins with that was a little rough around the edges. But for that one student, I said, you know what? I'm going to trust you enough that whenever we have papers to turn in, homework papers, I'm going to let you turn those in. So when you come in the classroom, once you get settled, I want you to look in the basket, any papers in the basket to return, that's your job. And the student at first, and other students were like, well, I want that task. But for that one particular student, that meant the world to him. He had a task that he could do. For once, no other teacher may not have believed in him, but for an hour and a half, he had a task in my classroom. That student would come in, he did a great job at it. And of course, I'll praise the student. And it's often that sometimes we give those students, they have all the energy, we give them something to do so they can channel the energy from something negative to something positive. So you want to make sure, how will my classroom function? So now take a few minutes with your neighbor and talk about some procedures that you want to have in place in your classroom. Okay, now that we've talked about procedures and you had a chance to listen to some ideas from your friends and jot some things down, let's talk about the agenda. The question is, what will I do today? Very important. That's where it comes to that proper planning. When you go into your classroom, most teachers every teacher needs to know, what are they doing today? I've seen teachers that go in and wing it, and I've seen disasters, because as you're winging it, the students know when you're winging it, and any opportunity for them to actually sneak in and take over the classroom, they will. It's very important you ask yourself, what will I do today, and have that planned out. You want to make sure, what lesson will I do? What materials will I need for that class? And what good questions will I ask the students? All those are things, or management pieces that you need to know as you're getting ready to determine what are you going to do in your class today. So As you ask that question, any materials you need, how I'm going to give the materials out? Are the materials going to be on the desk? Are they going to be at the door? Am I going to hand them out? How is that going to happen? And what am I going to do? And how those transitions are going to be very smooth and effective for my students? The next question is, what will the students do today? Will it be teacher-led? Will it be student-led? Will the students know what's really going on? It's very important as students walk in, that they see what they're doing. For my classroom, I kept an agenda on the wall, and that agenda basically stated just some simple bullet points. It didn't give any details, but it was very precise, very to the point. Bullet number 1, warm up. Bullet 2, homework. Bullet 3, review. Bullet 4, whatever new topic. Bullet 5, guided practice. Bullet 6, independent practice. Exit ticket, and that was it. So I let the students know everything that will go on in class today. I also in my classroom had posted up as well as the agenda, but any important dates, any tests coming up, homework assignments due, any makeup assignments due, tutorial dates, all those things. So when the student came in, I had a section on the board where they could pretty much know the flow of the class for the day, but also be ready for any upcoming activities, any upcoming holidays, any kind of big projects or assignments that are due. So that was very important for me that I had the agenda on the board. So in your groups, talk to your neighbor about the importance of an agenda and what are some different things that you feel like that are non-negotiable in your agenda. Okay, next, let's talk about some intangibles that are part of the classroom management process that most people don't think about. One of the biggest pieces that I like to look at is building relationships. Building positive relationships, getting to know your students. Your students are going to come in with different attitudes, different backgrounds, different beliefs, but it's very important that you get to know those students. Can you do it all in one day? No. Can you do it all in 2 days? In a week? No. But as the year goes through, it's important to get to know those students. Be observant of the students that come in with their bags or t-shirts from the activities, football players, choir, athletes. Be able to, or different clubs, support those clubs. So as you're getting to know the students, building those relationships, often when I would see a student come in with their different activity bags, I would visit that activity or that game and say, hey, I saw you last week at the game. You did a great job. And once the student knows that you care, that relationship actually starts to get better. Always make sure that you try to get to know your students, build positive relationships, and build a very good rapport. Contact parents when necessary. Often, a lot of parents just want to hear a great job. And a lot of times parents don't get those phone calls. Am I asking you to call every student every day? But no, sometimes you may want to pinpoint a few students to call every week within your rosters for different classes. But make sure you contact those parents. Let the parents know that their child is doing great. Don't always call parents when their child is not doing well. And when you do call when the child is not doing well, try to state something positive within that phone contact. Next, be visible at school activities and events. It goes back to building those relationships. If you're one of the biggest parts about juggling time and classroom management is being able to do the things that's required at the school and also trying to slide in a few extracurricular activities, as well as your own personal social life and your own health. But sometimes attending school events can be very, very beneficial for you. When the students know that you are chaperoning dances or attending games or coming to their choir, their performance in the drama club, that means a lot to the students. A lot of times, some students' parents can't make every event, but when you're there, and a lot of times the students will ask you, hey, my choir is having a concert. It's not really free. It's $5. My parents can't afford to come, but can you come? Be there. Be there. It means the world. Even if they're singing a solo or if they're just in the background or if they're just someone doing stage lighting, be there for your students. Build those relationships. Let them know that you care. And my last question is, praise your students. It's never too much to praise the students. Praise them for the little things. Praise them for the big things. Praise them for a job well done. High fives, excellent job, thumbs up, round of applause. All those things are part of the classroom management. Makes the students feel accepted, builds their confidence. When their confidence is at 10, they will do anything and whatever they have for you. So with that being said, praise your students, help them, correct them when they're wrong, but definitely praise them when they're right. So I presented a few things to you today about classroom management. Did I go through everything? No, I did not. But I touched on some things that can help you get through the first few weeks. If you have any questions about this presentation or just classroom management tips as a whole, feel free to email me or you can visit me in my office. Remember, classroom management is very important. It's definitely something that we have to get right. As a first year teacher, a lot of teachers struggle with it, but I think these are tips that you can start from day one, being prepared, that you put in place that can actually be effective for you. And remember, the better management techniques that you have in place, the more time you can spend teaching your students and the less time you'll lose for instructions. If you have any questions, once again, you can email me or come visit my office. Thank you.